Our final reading here on this Epiphany, day when we remember Epiphany, is from John, the 2nd chapter. And why don't we stand? On the third day, there was a wedding in Cana of Galilee, and the mother of Jesus was there. Jesus and his disciples had also been invited to the wedding. When the wine gave out, the mother of Jesus said to him, "They have no wine." And Jesus said to her, "Woman, what concern is that to you and to me? My hour has not yet come." His mother said to the servants, "Do whatever he tells you." Now standing there were 6 stone jars, water jars, for the Jewish rites of purification, each holding 20 or 30 gallons. Jesus said to them, "Fill the jars with water." And they filled them up to the brim. He said to them, "Now draw some out and take it to the chief steward." So they took it. When the steward tasted the water that had become wine, and did not know where it came from, though the servants who had drawn the water knew, the steward called the bridegroom and said to him, "Everyone serves the good wine first, and then the inferior wine after the guests have become drunk. But you have kept the good wine until now." Jesus did this, the first of his signs, in Cana of Galilee, and revealed his glory, and his disciples believed in him. This is the word of the Lord. Please be seated. Okay, a show of hands here. Be honest. How many of you have taken your tree down already? Raise your hand. Yep, we have two. Okay. How many of you, if you have lights on your house, how many of you have quit turning on the lights on the outside of your house? Yep. Yeah, that's what I thought. Anyone do any holiday baking this week? Yeah, that's what I thought also. No more cookies, no more lefse, no more big holiday meals, right? Christmas is over. It's done. That is except here at church, right? Except here at church. You see, here at church, we have all the lights still up. We've got these beautiful poinsettias, the Christmas garlands all up. Here at church, instead, we celebrate what we call the season of Christmas. The 12 days of the Christmas season take us from Christmas Eve and the story of that little baby in the manger, right? To the three stories we read today. In the church, we continue. Christmas continues. But you know this. As far as the rest of the world is concerned, Christmas is done and gone, right? New Year's is gone. Most of us have already failed at our New Year's Eve resolutions. It's on to Valentine's Day. Christmas is a distant memory. Kids are back to school. Parents go back to work. There are no more concerts, no programs. All the leftover Christmas cookies are stale now. It's back to the grind, people. It's back to the everyday, ordinary life. But here at the church, Christmas continues. The church is sort of like that little annoying brother or sister we had that just wouldn't give up, wouldn't stop pestering us. To the church, Christmas carries on. And yet there's something weird about that, isn't there? Given the rest of the world is on to the next thing and life is back to normal, it just feels a little strange. Amid the season of Christmas, today here at the church, we celebrate what we call Epiphany. The Christmas story began with the story of Jesus' birth and ends with Epiphany, what we call Epiphany. And even though most of us have already returned all our Christmas gifts that were the wrong size, here in the church, this weekend we continue with Christmas. We read 3 stories today that remind us about what's at the heart of the Christmas story. These stories, they take us beyond the angels, they take us beyond the manger and remind us that Christmas just isn't over. We're just getting to the good part of the story. And even though already you can't find eggnog in the grocery store, the church continues with Christmas. And we call today Epiphany, which means, Epiphany means to shine forth. It means to appear. And we hear in these three stories we read today how this child Jesus appeared to the world way back when, for the very first time. How God shined, was revealed through the Christ child to all the world. Bear with me here. We started today with the story of the Magi. We've also heard them called kings or wise men. They followed the star. Folks, you've got to know that the very fact that those wise men, these three men from the east, made it into the Christmas story is remarkable, really. You see, these guys were outsiders. They're foreigners. They didn't look or act or believe as anyone should in that manger, huh? Some have said they were astrologists. It seems to me that they were the kind of people who would have likely found, we could have found them reading tarot cards and playing with Ouija boards rather than reading their Bibles. And they, the Bible tells us, they of all people are one of the first people to hear the birth story, to hear about the birth of Christ. Clearly, folks, people would have taken notice of these three wise men, these three magi, we call them, there at the stable. They didn't belong there, but it seems to this God of ours, they have a place. Right away, right there at the beginning of the Christmas story, we hear that in Jesus, God makes it known that outsiders, there are no outsiders in God's story, that this Jesus comes for all. That's the first story. The second story we read today was about Jesus' baptism, right? We hear how Jesus walks right down into the murky, mucky, brown waters of the Jordan River. I've been there. It's not a clean river. It's mucky. It's dirty. That river there, they washed their clothes in that river. The animals drank from that river. They used that water to feed their crops. And there in that dirty water, along with this common guy by the name of John, dressed in camel's hair, something remarkable happens. We heard the story today. There in those waters, the heavens open up, and God says, "This is my son, the beloved, with whom I'm well pleased." And it happens right there in those murky, mucky waters of the Jordan. That's the second story. The third story we read today, we read about was the wedding. Right? It's a wedding story. How many of you have been to a wedding reception? Raise your hand. Yeah, we've all been there. You know the type. The usual catered chicken meal, awkward toasts by groomsmen, the obligatory prayer by the pastor, the dance. There amidst that common occurrence, that ordinary wedding, again, something extraordinary happens, right? Water is turned into wine. And the Bible says that Jesus has something to do with it. Folks, in each of these three stories, whether we're in the Christmas spirit or not, the Christmas story continues. God enters our world, and in Jesus, God's revealed to those outsiders, those foreign magi, in that dirty old Jordan River, to John at that oh-so-common wedding, huh? Jesus comes. Jesus continues to come. The story of Christmas continues. But again, here's what I know about us. As hard as we church people try to halt the passing of Christmas, for most of us, it's gone. Gone are the Christmas sales in stores. We've packed away those Christmas ties and sweaters and socks. We're back to the ordinary, everyday routines of our lives. Folks, and this makes me wonder. It makes me wonder if maybe the story of our faith, maybe the heart and depth and the real faith we need in this life isn't found at Christmas. Maybe it's not found there. Maybe it's not found in this time when all is calm and all is bright, when we find ourselves on vacation surrounded by family and friends and music and all the lights. Rather, folks, maybe what we need is a God who meets us more so in the ordinary days. These ordinary These back to normal days, those 9 to 5 days, those school days, those running kids to practice and that rehearsal days, those doctor appointment days, those house repairing, worrying about kids and grandkids days. Folks, maybe what we need is a God who meets us. Not so much amid the joy and the fun and cheer of Christmas. Of course, God's there. But maybe what we need is a God who meets us in the everyday, ordinary. These ordinary days, huh? When my wife and I lived in Minneapolis, I was home almost every Friday with our son, Lars, when he was little. Fridays we called our boys' days. It was just us men at home on Fridays. And so occasionally we got a little stir-crazy around the house, and we'd venture out into the city to see what kind of trouble Dad and Lars could get into. And on this particular Friday, we found ourselves at a Macy's department store. And I'll never forget, Lars he was just learning to talk. He was kind of stumbling around there in Macy's. And as we were walking through Macy's, we passed by this mirror that went from the floor all the way up to the ceiling. This huge mirror. And I remember as we passed by, Lars and his little legs came to a screeching halt. Screeching halt. And he stopped and he pointed at his reflection in this big, big mirror. And then he looked at me with this goofy grin on his face, kind of giggled a little bit, and then he pointed back at his reflection, and I remember him yelling at me, "Who's that, Papa? Who's that?" Huh? Right there in the midst of the hustle and bustle of Macy's, the everyday, ordinary, people coming and going and buying and doing their thing, there Lars discovered something new. Huh? His reflection right there. It was as if he'd found a new friend for the very first time. "Who's that?" he said. Huh? Amid the crowds, people doing what they do, Lars discovered something new. Huh? And I think, folks, that's what the Christmas story is all about, really. Even though the 12 days of Christmas aren't over yet, in all reality, we're back to our everyday, ordinary, our hustle and bustle, our routines. We're back to ordinary life, and maybe that's what the Christmas story is all about. As we read these stories, we find Jesus, he's revealed, he's made known. God searches out not the religious elite or those who attend Bible study every week faithfully or those who live nice, neat, tidy lives. Rather, Jesus is revealed to these outsiders, these folks from the East. Jesus comes not to the pious few, but to ordinary people. People who know real life, everyday ordinary people like you and me who are busy with the stuff of real life. We also find Jesus in the murky, mucky waters of the Jordan River, and we're reminded that Jesus comes. Jesus comes knowing that our lives are murky and mucky too. And believe it or not, Jesus is quite comfortable in the muck and the yuck. And Jesus shows up at that common experience of a wedding dance and there does something pretty remarkable. Folks, maybe that's what today is about. Yeah, Christmas Eve is special, but God comes. God comes to be right here with us in these ordinary, everyday moments of our lives. These days we return to this time of year, those January and February days where we start to hate the cold and the snow and the ordinary grind of daily life, where busy schedules resume, where life is back to normal and we're not sure we like it so much. Folks, though the church carries on with Christmas, our lives carry on with real life. And today, on this day we call Epiphany, we're reminded that it's right there in the everyday ordinary that God broke into this world of ours. God broke in to be with everyday ordinary people like you and me. Thanks be to God. Amen.
Stand praise you.